This is The Globe. Using art to educate, entertain and emancipate. Nomaza Nongqunga Coupez is the brains behind Undiscovered Canvas. Based in France, Undiscovered Canvas shares South African art with the world. And to tell us more, we are joined by Nomaza herself via Skype. Very good evening to you, Nomaza. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us more about how Undiscovered Canvas was born.
Good evening. First and foremost, you said my surname so nicely. It's very rare that I get to have somebody pronounce my surname so well.
I'm so glad.
Good evening to everybody at the studio, and good evening to all South Africans. I arrived in France in the year 2009. And arriving in France, I was quickly struck about when I saw how the culture here in France was consumed. And I also realized that culture was used to economically free French and international artists. And at the same time, it was also used to stimulate tourism. I was lucky enough to arrive not in Paris, but in the south of France, which is extremely touristic. And I saw immediately that, there were not enough South Africans, especially the visual artists, being presented within the sphere. And I realized that the reason for that is because obviously France, South Africa, we do have the barrier with the language. And secondly, there was not enough presentation. And I thought to myself, since I'm going to be based in France for a very long time, why not take this opportunity to first and foremost start something that will benefit me as a South African, but also be able to promote young emerging artists into a market, a French market that is already consuming cultural goods. So this is how the idea of Undiscovered Canvas was born in 2009.
Indeed, and there's a particular fascination about the African continent, especially from the international community, particularly European countries. So how has the reception of South African art been in France?
It has been quite well received. However, lots of education needed to be done in the sense that what is contemporary, we have no idea to what point the French still do not know what is happening in South Africa. Their knowledge is extremely limited to what our realities are. So I really had to start off by educating them about our contemporary side, who we were, by bringing artists that through their artworks, they were discussing either social, political issues that bit by bit educated the French market. But what I did was I went to extremely young artists with techniques that I knew for a fact that would then also grab the interest of the French people, because they would ask themselves, how did they do this? So that was very important. And as I did all these exhibitions, more and more French people were extremely interested in what I was doing, in such a way that I do even now get to do great sales. And I've accumulated collectors that follow me and buy the artists that I bring to France.
You say that their knowledge of the African continent, particularly in South Africa, is very limited. And I guess that is where you come in. I mean, African art is a great catalyst for telling African stories. So where would you say African contemporary art intersects with its counterparts around the globe, with art being a universal language, as it were?
I would say that it's, well, first and foremost, Europeans, or even us as Africans, we need to stop saying African art, because Africa as a continent is so huge and we are extremely diversified. So the fact that when Africans talk about Africa, we do it globally, and it influences the fact that also Europeans, when they talk about Africa, it is always in the sense of saying Africa, which is false completely. So as a result, the contemporary aspect of it is difficult to transmit, because when they think about Africa, they think about Africa in the terms of when they had colonized Africa and how Africa was during those stages. And when you're going to talk about France, then they will basically be talking about French-speaking African states, which has got nothing to do with the Lusophone or the English-speaking countries. So already that separation needs to be done. before you can even start talking about contemporary, because without that separation in their imagination, they cannot see African artists being contemporary. And this is where the education is extremely important.
You know what, Nomaza, we're banking on you to tell the African story, particularly the South African story, through your art. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, that was Nomaza Nongqunga Coupez. She's the brains behind Undiscovered Canvas, speaking to us live from France. Well, more news coming up at the top of the hour. This is The Globe.